This is a non-technical presentation, and I think the numbers in the audience show that. Well, absolutely, and what a wonderful audience, and thank you for coming. I think we're going to need that door open. Excuse me, could we open that door? Because you might be able to tell I'm from Scotland, and I'm not used to any sort of heat whatsoever. Okay, so let's kick off. I'll talk you through why the presentation's got the title it's got and what we're going to discuss as we go through. This is a picture of me in the suit. It occasionally happens. So that's who I am professionally. And in terms of why am I here, well, one reason it's good to come and present and not have to answer the question, what is Hadoop and what is big data? That really is revolutionary compared to some of the other conferences you speak at. In terms of where I've came from, I was a business intelligence, data warehouse, architect, developer. And probably over the last 2.5, 3 years, I've decided that the world has moved and I'm going to move my career with it. So I'm all in on Hadoop. I believe this is the way to do things. I believe it's not just the technology, it's a way that you actually approach analytical and data projects. And I've managed to convince a few of my executive peer group and certainly executive sponsors that this is also the case. So I'll be talking about some of the ways I've justified the business investment. One of the interesting analytics that I would like to do is how many people write these, write these descriptions of their talks. Was it 4 months before, Gary? Then look at it probably about 2 weeks ago and went, oh good Lord, what was I thinking? And then on Tuesday night, finish the presentation and then get in a plane and come here. So really, what I want to do is, there's a lot of talk about the community, and I'm a big believer in open source, and I've been sort of conscious that myself as an individual and enterprises in general are more on the take side of the community thing, and I was thinking about what we could give back. So this is what I can give back. So I have experience in how to build a business case and sell these concepts and these technologies into a large enterprise. So HSBC is a very large enterprise. We're about, I'm going to get this number wrong, we're at least 250,000 people. Annual operating budget on the CEO side is measured in the tens of billions. IT spend is in the billions as well. So in terms of what it takes to justify a technology that you believe in and a sort of organisational change, I'm going to go through how we've justified that. And it's mainly on the basis of cost. So for those of you who weren't familiar with the term the invisible hand, it comes from Adam Smith. Adam Smith is one of the greatest Scottish thinkers of all time. This is not what I have in common with him. The fact that he wore a wig is what I have in common with him. Okay, but Adam Smith basically invented modern economics, and he made the proposition, and it's explained in metaphors, that price and cost will essentially dictate, the movement of product and goods within a capitalist economy or a free-floating economy. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other factors that can affect what people do and how change happens. But he made the proposition that the fundamental economics will determine what happens, and that's where I see Hadoop being quite successful, is this argument of the invisible hand, that there's a lot of unplanned and unintentional consequences of the activities, and the activities specifically up there within a community. So my sort of hypothesis to you guys is that Hadoop has changed so many fundamental things that it should also change the way we approach building our enterprises, taking our decisions, but also in the justification for using this project. It's the fundamental thing that you can argue for, is there's going to be a change within the enterprise. That change is essentially driven by cost and the economics of it, and this is what can allow you to be successful and argue against some of the people who are maybe not as keen on adopting a new technology. If you argue for a bigger, faster database, people aren't so much excited. If you argue that you have a chance to tackle some fundamental issues in terms of your cost base, but also grow your business at the same time, people are really far more interested. So, I mean, a business is really quite a simple thing. You put an initial investment into any kind of firm. So, you know, you see the startup guys here, someone's made a bet on them, made an investment. The actual profit that they make is the income that they've got minus their costs. And then you get a return on that investment. Any company is measured by this. Banks are measured return on equity. I see some investment analysts in the audience, so I won't try and teach anyone like that how to cut up a company, because they'll do a far better job than me. The takeaway from here is that there's no single way that you're going to explain Hadoop to any given individual. There's sort of two focuses that I see within the enterprises. So we've got it here as the CEO and the CIO. CEO wants to grow his business. He wants to either grow his margins, so reduce his costs and make himself more successful within his current products, or gain market share, being really better at what he does, or grow the number of people that use his products, grow his actual product base as well. A CIO, in my experience, and I'll be interested, if we go through the Q&A, people have a different view. CIO is getting hammered on the cost of his IT infrastructure. Absolutely hammered on it. We have a sort of ongoing deal between technology and the business in HSBC that the spending will remain flat, and any saves that the CIO can make within his current cost base can be reinvested within technology. So that's a good deal, I think, for technology. It's not a swinging cut, you must save 10, 20, 30%. But if you cut, you will be allowed to reinvest. And I'm seeing that in a number of firms and guys that I speak to in the industry. And what has happened over the years, I feel anyway, is that we've had a lot of sort of big bang, explosive type projects. I've never worked on it, but ERPs always looked like that to me. CRMs looked like that to me. We've had projects that have been based on optimistic business cases. They have involved substantial amounts of upfront investment, and nothing really comes to market or gets delivered to several years down the line. Now, those projects, CEOs change and people lose patience with those projects. So you end up with a lot of tactical implementations. At the same time, I think the technology world has been focused significantly on the wrong things. We've got the green box at the bottom. So, specific from our experience, we in the banking industry, and I think this is more than just HSBC, have been obsessed on getting down to a single product set or a single set of vendors. We only use mainly one database. And we treat this because we can go to a single vendor and negotiate a great big deal, and there is economies of scale there. But it doesn't tackle the essential complexity of our enterprise. We might have one vendor, but we've got 4,000 databases. We can't issue one query. We've got to distribute the query all over the world. And we're not able to execute on our strategies that are being designed by our CEO. So HSBC was quite a country-driven and product-driven business maybe 3-4 years ago. And we've had a strategic change from our new CEO, Stuart Gulliver, came in, and he says, well, everything's about the client, and we're only going to have global products. So we've got 4 businesses now. It's simplified into 4 businesses. But what we've got behind, and I'm going to use the L word, is that legacy of the way the world used to be. Thousands of databases, thousands of operational platforms, and data spread everywhere. And we need something that can tackle that middle piece, all that tactical spend and that under-delivered strategic spend that's lying behind there. I think the key thing I would try and press on you is people talk about legacy as if it's a bad word. I suppose it is a bad word. It's not a tremendously offensive word, but what it really means is you've got stuff from when you used to be. We're still in business today. We still run a successful business. We make money. That's heritage. What technology has to do is deploy new technology that can allow us to leverage that heritage. And I certainly believe that Hadoop is fundamentally a part of that picture. In fact, it's the part of the picture. However, that's my architecture presentation that I didn't bring with me today. So, just to emphasize that, the CEO, or CIO, is obsessed with cost. Obsessed with capital expenditure up front, the operational cost of running the platforms, and the cost of change. So, these guys don't get into the job straight out of college. They've been through a few of these loops. They've probably been through Y2K. They've probably been through the internet 1.0 and 2.0. And now you're turning up saying, guess what? It's changed again. Everything's different. We're going to have to reinvent the wheel. So there's a real wariness about guys like me rocking up. And within that peer group, I'm quite a young person. Obviously, coming to the Hadoop Summit, I'm not quite a young person. But people coming up and saying, look, this is something new, it's something different. You really, really, really have to do it. And the way we have to nuance that message with this group is to make sure that we hit their concerns. And their concerns are, I don't want to spend $10 million up front before I even get anything installed. I don't want an environment that's going to be resistant to change as soon as I've implemented it. I do my first release and then I feel I have to change it again and again and again, and that costs me another 2 years in change. And I don't want something that I'm going to have to deploy an army of people to actually administer. So you've got to hit all those key cost challenges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these key cost challenges and I'm going to show you where we were as opposed to where we think Hadoop takes us. And we've started to build out some actual numbers, which I'm not going to share with you, but I'll sort of hint at them as we go. So in terms of CapEx, and who I'm coming after here is our large, or the industry's large vendors. In order to do an analytics project, you probably needed a big database, you maybe needed an MPP platform, you maybe needed an analytics vendor as well. All those guys needed hardware. You were looking at tens of millions of dollars at upfront cost. So your barrier to entry was way up here, okay? And then what you would do is you would go to the business and say, well, actually, you're not going to pay for that up front. What we're going to do is we're going to buy it initially and then amortize it over 5 years. You did an accountancy trick. And then he says, actually, it's not too much. Don't worry about it. And then you get to the end of the 5 years and you've run out of capacity. And you have to go and buy an even bigger box and even bigger analytics and so on and so forth. So you get that sort of pattern of expenditure. The one thing is the true cost is really disguised. We should be, I think, we should be concerned with what it costs our shareholders rather than any sort of internal accountancy trick. And that upfront cost really, really should be mitigated. So in the Hadoop world, what you see is basically you're starting at the origin of cost. So you can start up any sort of Hadoop-based infrastructure on as few as 2 computers. Our first cluster was 4. Okay, so 4 nodes, a full spend of about $20,000 US. You know that you can grow that cluster as you need it, and you don't have that stepwise change. So linear scale absolutely nails this big upfront investment and this need to spend a whole load of money up front. We know from people in the industry that you can get to 5, 6, 7,000 nodes, and the software's just going to work. I mean, we've seen it already. We've went from the 4 nodes to 10 times that, and there's no big drama about it. You just add in those boxes. It does give an operational challenge if that's not the way we've worked. And it is an organisational challenge and an operational challenge is we need to get into the idea of build it as we need it, whereas previously we would have just built it and then filled it up. So this concept of sort of just-in-time provision of services, very akin to the cloud model, is really where we think Hadoop nails a sort of CapEx piece. On the change piece, this is where I get into a mini rant, actually. So as I said, I was a data warehouse guy. I've seen 2 real approaches to building data warehouses. One is you define an extract and you say, here is my view of customer please go and get all my customers, but make sure it looks like this. And as I said, we've got several thousand source systems. What happens is that, that's quite a successful way to approach things. You've got a little bit of pain because all the source teams need to go through their extract. But you do get somewhere. The problem you've got is it becomes instantly resistant to change. If you need to add a field to that customer extract, you need to go back to all those source systems and ask for it. So you get into a situation where you get a very, very narrow view of your enterprise and something that is not easy, that doesn't really evolve easily with your business. So we see that approach gets up past several hundred source systems. This is exactly the approach we use for things like collateral management, where the calculations in the banking world are known. They don't often change. And, we maybe upgrade every couple of years. It's sort of successful for that. It doesn't really work with big data warehouse, discovery, analytics type projects because the business moves too fast and can't adopt to that standard quick enough. Second model we've seen is multiple models, which is we just say, let's take as much of the source system as we can and let's work through that source system, involve that EDW model as we go. Let's build that logical model and then physicalize it. I haven't seen this get past 20 source systems, right? Maybe I'm rubbish and everybody that I've worked with are rubbish, but I just haven't seen that model get past multiple source systems. The intricacies of a single view are just too difficult. You can get it if you envision it up front and you do your single extract, but trying to do it as you go just doesn't work. And you find that your cost model basically has a breakpoint. Now that breakpoint, if you enforce a single model, might get pushed further down, but it does have a breakpoint. In the Hadoop world, you've got schema on read. Okay, so you can ingest the data as a whole and then work it out as you go. This has been particularly popular in our projects. So the sort of philosophy we have followed is don't do an extract, take the whole system. Don't take the data because you need it today, take the data because you might need it at some point in the future. So we've done full source extracts of data from our legacy platforms. We really would like actually to avoid the app layer. We would like to do it at the infrastructure layer. So I would like to copy all the data as resides in blocks on the disks. So we're working on building adapters that can allow us to do that. But the real benefit there is that you can land the information on your Hadoop cluster and then allow your business users to work through what that view of the model might look like. So instead of your ETL approach or your integration approach being driven by structures and definitions and analysis, being driven by content. So if you can't actually match that data up, then it's not going to integrate and you're not going to see it. The other big benefit, and especially for an organization like ourselves, with thousands of source systems, and this would be the same for any mature organization, I think, is that it allows you to automate the loads. Because when you're taking the whole system, most systems have got some sort of catalog or data dictionary. So if something changes in that source system, there's a column change. In the ETL world, ETL might well break. There might be a disruption to it. ETL is quite brittle. In this world, all you do is you read the catalog, you copy, you place in there. That's your load done. You can fully automate that in these jobs in a couple of days. So what we're seeing is that really we don't see any so far scenario where the traditional approach would be faster and cheaper. Now we are a little bit different to other organisations, so I come with a health warning here. A typical pattern that we see within HSBC is we will have a single system that does CRM, a single system that does settlements. And because of the complexities of delivery and some regulatory issues as well, jurisdictional issues, we will deploy that X number of times. So that might be 40, 50, 60. I've seen 80 instances of one of our CRM systems. And the pattern you get is that our data is the same but a little bit different. Now, in the ETL world, that kills us. Those variances kill us. Even if they're minute as, the columns are a little bit different in length, or maybe the operator's typing in a different reference point within the legacy system. So for us, the variance within the data sets aren't large, okay? So we've got 80 versions, 60 versions of the same thing, just a little bit different. And that's what allows us to automate so much. That's where we get really, really successful sort of results in terms of being able to change things quickly. But this isn't magic beans, right? So the reason that data scientists, if they actually exist, are so rare and their skill sets are so expensive is that to manage or merge or integrate data that is wildly different. So take your Twitter data and integrate it with, something that's going on in a core transactional system in a bank. That's actually very, very challenging. So the sweet spot we're seeing for Hadoop is that ability to take all the information in volume when it's quite highly correlated and do the integration as you go in that integration because content-driven and business-driven, and we take that out of IT. So that, I've tried to draw it in the graph here where you know the structure and you're developing applications on top of it. That's really, really quite simple because you know that. When you don't know the structure, that becomes more expensive in terms of determining the model. Where there's an intersection is really where you want to hit your Hadoop. So where your data is quite similar, excellent. Where your data is wildly different, you can do it, but it's going to cost you more and you're going to spend more time on it and you're not going to automate it. You're going to need smart people. Okay, so that's the health warning. The last piece I'm going to tackle is operational expenditure. I need to be careful here. I'm going to upset all my colleagues. I'm astonished at how many people and pieces of infrastructure we deploy just to keep the lights on. It astonishes me. I think it's one of the dirty secrets of our industry, actually. And I can see why we've done things in terms of an organisational structure. So we must be similar to a lot of organisations out there. We'll have, it's all done in horizontals, we'll have a SAN team, and we'll have a platforms team, and then we'll have a database team, and then we'll have an app server team, and then we'll have a networks team, and then we've got a whole layer of management to manage that army. Your ratio of humans to machines is not good enough. It's just not good enough for the modern world. So it's not that we're bad, it's just that the technology has driven us, that invisible hand has driven us into a sort of cost model that when you look at it now, the Googles, the LinkedIns and the Twitters, they're sort of mocking us because they've got 10 guys running the whole data center or something ridiculous like that, and we've got more people working in technology than any of those companies. So how did that happen? Well, it happened because they started later and they did other stuff. But I think that OPEX model is there to be challenged. So we're looking to look to Hadoop. How would that work? So we think the curve sort of looks like this. If you just want a single database to build your application on, it's only going to be 100 megabytes or whatever, go and install. Let's make sure I get them all. Go and install an Oracle, a Microsoft SQL Server, a DB2, MySQL if you're a bit funky. Don't deploy Hadoop, right? That's not what it's there for. However, you're here because you want to do analytics. If you want to do an analytics platform, you can spin up one of those pieces of technology, an RDBMS or even an MPP quite quickly, and you won't have to throw loads and loads of people at it. However, as it gets more complex, as it gets bigger, as you get numbers and numbers of ETL jobs on it, as you're including all those storage people, the platforms people, all the rest of it, your costs will start to go that way. Now, this is the bit that is sort of theory because we haven't been in a production environment long enough. But speaking to peers in the industry who've been at this for a few years now, they sort of start with a Hadoop team of 10. And, they get to several thousand computers, and it maybe goes to 15. And that's quite a fleshy model. If you speak to the fella from Spotify who was on the panel this morning, you get a team of 5 doing this. Okay? Now, again, it's not magic beans. So some of the work that all those teams would have done, especially in the ETL world. You've pushed down the road, you've kicked out to your business. But what we have an ambition to do is sort of flip the amount of effort that we spend within these kinds of projects. So we'd rather that the tech, and this might get me hung from a tree, we'd rather that the tech was really small, actually. So in terms of 80-20, I think 80% of the effort in a traditional analytics project would have been technologists. We think it should be 20. And we think the analysts should be the 80. They should be working in the data in a content-driven way. So we feel that Hadoop offers an opportunity to do that. The software is self-healing. One of our implementations, I don't know what happened, but we had a pretty catastrophic failure. And we lost 35% of the storage on one of the clusters. Cluster stayed up. Okay? So this stuff is proven it works. Doesn't mean you can't break it. Of course you can break it, and you can break anything, and humans are very effective, more so than any user or machine. But it's self-healing. You don't have to deploy, an army of hundreds to manage a single implementation. So you're looking at a very, very small core engineering team, someone that can look after, thousands of computers. So that computer-human ratio really starts to level out. I think it brings us an additional challenge that there's not too many people that actually know how to do this, and we need to go and find those people. But, HSBC have managed to grow some of those people. So for me, the invisible hand of Hadoop is that where traditional platforms would limit the supply of the analytics and the data and the services that we're getting provisioned for it, Hadoop actually grows that demand. It gives your business a chance to execute in some of the strategies that they felt were outside of their economic grasp previously. Some of the numbers I've got up there I'll definitely stand by. So in terms of when you juxtapose Hadoop against MPP, it's around about between 95-99% cheaper. I spoke to one guy in the organisation, we'll rename undisclosed. Because of the way they had signed their outsourcing deal with their hardware supplier, he was paying $250 a terabyte on his MPP platform. And that's a huge cost. Hadoop's around about 1,000. It's maybe 5 if you have to do extra things because you're in the enterprise and you need additional resiliency, but it's just not there. Your time to market goes through the floor with Hadoop. You can do things very, very quickly. The challenge there is you have to govern how you do things and make sure you don't grow chaos quicker. So we've looked at implementing data access through a set of controlled APIs. Very, very simple thing to do, certainly on top of a Java cluster. But it allows you a level of control. Your data scientists go in and they experiment, but people who are going to build apps off the top of it do it through an API, and then you're fine. So there's an additional piece of governance you have to do. But your time to market is unbelievably quick. We took one of our jobs, our most complex jobs, from our legacy ETL platform and recoded it using a combination of Hive and Pig. It took us a day and a half worth of development time. We took one of our batches, recoded the whole batch. I think the development time was about 20 days, and we got the runtime down from 3 hours to 10 minutes. That's on that initial 4-node cluster. So my point is the CIO gets what he wants. He gets a new technology. He gets to say he's being innovative, and he gets to do it without him bursting the bank. The CEO actually starts to give you a bit of love and say, yes, we can. And you start to be able to have discussions about how you forward your digital strategy. So the stuff that we're trying to do from a business perspective is not different to any other organisation. We want to be customer-centric, we want to be multi-channel, and we want to present uniform data through all of those channels. Hadoop really gives you an ability to execute on some of those ambitions. For me, it's just, I feel like I've had some sort of rebirth after a couple of really rough data warehouse projects. And the confidence myself and my team have got are really off the scale in these environments. Just to give you finish off by what the numbers look like in terms of what we've measured. I mean, it says it there. So OPEX-wise, just from the pilot, we were looking at a total cost reduction, total cost of data we started measuring. So how much do we spend on people running these platforms, the investment required for it, and also the sort of humans that are required to do the job. We reckon the total cost of data comes down about 90%. Okay, you can split that into operational and change, which we have done. But the trouble with the change piece is you get into that correlation of data thing. So if your data is wildly different, you're probably going to spend a lot of time on it. Now, you could get into an argument that you probably couldn't easily execute on unstructured data in these other platforms. That's a bit moot for us. But certainly you have to be wary of that. Return on investment, because your initial investment is so low, you can get it back by switching off a few RDBMSs. That's the reality of this. This is tiny bucks. And we managed to do a significant installation for our pilot in 6 weeks. Now, if you work for your LinkedIn, your Twitter, you probably take 6 weeks to reinvent a platform. 6 weeks for an investment bank is a very short time scale. That's just the reality of it. We've got the production going. The numbers are looking better because as you get bigger, it gets cheaper. Right? Your total cost comes down. I'll maybe come back next year and tell you about that. Any questions? Okay, so the question was, how did we find our initial use cases? There was, from a technology perspective, there was a little bit of, there must be a better way to do this, right? So we probably started the initial investigations late 2011. So we've been at this around about 2 years. The first challenge we had was a burning issue on the business side, and we needed to execute on, I've got to be careful what I say here. We needed to provide the business a full view of all the client information across the globe. So across 40 jurisdictions, we had to integrate about 150 data sources. We knew from experience that doing that via those traditional technologies would be a boil the ocean project and a price that was too high for the business. So the demand and that business use case was coming from the regulatory world, which is why I'm being quite cautious about what I say. But so regulation was demanding a business use case. And we knew that in order to be able to execute on that, we would have to spend tens of millions and we would end up doing it in spreadsheets. So that was the initial use case. What we're finding as we've gone is that as people see the capability we've built, so it's like a field of dreams, right? So where it started with something that would be very, very difficult to do previously, we're starting to find all these use cases coming out the woodwork that we'd never really thought of before. Another good example would be we've got a lot of customer relationship information that's sitting in Word documents. A relationship manager will go out to a corporate client and write down an annual report. Who are you banking with this year? What are you doing? What business are you in? You launched any new products? All sitting in a Word document. Now, to run analytics on that is really quite hard. What we did is we took it into Hadoop, we decomposed it, we used, there's a Apache library, Tika, and then we put Elasticsearch over the top of it. All of a sudden, they've got an ability to create dashboards in HTML5 using a standard bunch of libraries. So the initial use cases were something that was really, really burning, and we knew that the traditional technology, we might not get there. And what we're finding now is that people have got an understanding of the capability, and they're bringing the stuff to us. We're sort of open for business now. Yes, please.
You now have a client view in Hadoop. Do you also put the same data into Enterprise data warehouse, or is it only Hadoop? What is the relation between Hadoop and EDW?
The relationship, they don't have one just now, so they're sort of waiting on Match.com to bring them together. This is going to be complementary to what we do. This is not a rip and replace. Okay, so the way I see this evolving in terms of an architecture is your very, very hot data is probably going to still go to our MPP system, but we're going to offload that data into the Hadoop environment underneath. Have we built that? No, because we're not big users of MPP in the investment bank, believe it or not. So that's something that we're evolving, but it's not something that's been a concern. As it is today, everything's in Hadoop, but that'll probably evolve later on. We're not going to get rid of RDBMS and we're not going to get rid of MPP, but it will be the right tool for the right job, and it's going to be driven by price. I can guarantee you that. Yes, please.
Roughly speaking, what do you suppose the split is in cost between infrastructure, software, and the human labor that makes them?
Depends what your time frame is. So, over a 5-year period, it's mostly human cost. It's probably about 60-70% human cost. The software cost, depending on who your vendor is variable, obviously, but you're probably talking about another, say, 20%. And then the rest is hardware. But it's mostly people cost. And those percentages are skewed because, again, getting back to the economics, because the software and the hardware is relatively cheap. To be honest, the hardware that we're throwing at this has got redundant power supplies and a whole bunch of enterprise stuff that's not required in Hadoop. So I think going forward, we can see that the hardware is going to get cheaper and skinnier. Does that answer your question? Yes, please.
What kind of percentage is allocated to training costs or retraining costs? In looking forward in your stuff, if you have 20% of the total cost, you train my Microsoft guys, Java guys.
Okay, so the question was, what's your, going forward, what do you anticipate your training costs are going to be? One of the things that we did in order to verify that this was usable, right? So if you've got a technology and you need to go and hire Google people, it's maybe not the best technology to choose. So we spun up a hackathon event. We went to our offshore site in China, in Guangzhou, and gave those guys a cluster and said, let's build a set of apps on that. So 24 hours, we get 18 apps. There was 60 people, signed up for the event. It was wildly successful, and then we knew we had something. So our Java Oracle guys could crush it in this environment. So we have spent money on training as a percentage of total cost. I don't know, 1% or something. Insignificant, really insignificant. People talk about the big data hype. To me, you've got to sort of use that potential energy to get a bit of kinetic. So the reason we got 60 people is because they all want to work in big data. So you get your best people turning up, they want to crush it in this environment, and they want to be successful in front of their peers and in front of their management. And that's a very effective way to do it. When you combine that with the fact that you don't need hundreds of these guys, you can let the cream rise to the top, manage your platform for you. So training costs haven't been significant. We have run a couple of training courses, but the guys learn more on the job. And we have time for one more question. Go on, Alex. Is it preferable? Yes, and I'll tell you why. Does the cost get shifted? Absolutely. But that's what we want. So, your traditional project would be, well, I think the model looks like this. And essentially a model is that. It's a model, it's a hypothesis of what you believe your data looks like. Generating your schema, because you do end up with a schema, right? It might be an HBase schema or it might be an API, but you end up with it somewhere where you can get a standard view of the data. Doing that based on what your data actually looks like in production today, based on what the users have typed in or what your clients have sent in, is absolutely the way to do it. It's the only way, to be honest, to tackle some of your perennial problems in data quality and all the rest of it, is to do it on an actual basis of what's there. So what we find is that we've given our users a set of the nicer BI dashboarding tools. And they've built a set of quality dashboards to monitor the data. And again, 80/20, they can tell us to automate some of the rules that they're seeing coming out of their dashboards. So we can do that, but they can also build rules themselves within their reports. The endpoint is a standard schema. So you're going to get there, but you've got to get there with your business telling you what it looks like. And that addresses some of the ownership challenges you have within data warehousing. Who owns the data? Well, the business owns the data, but unless the schema is wrong, in which case you own it. All right? So we find it gives us a better level of quality and success, and it's really energized the business to work with them. So who did they used to send to a data quality project? Wasn't their best guys. Who do they want to send to this in order to generate customer analytics? They send their best people. So again, it's another empowering thing. Okay, I'm out of time, folks. Sorry. Thank you very much.